Is there any news that we know about that we want to talk about, Peter?
I think the news is out there.
Yep, there is an announcement at Apple that there's a Final Cut Pro 10 updated with significant workflow improvements. I posted the link in the chat.
Significant workflow improvements.
Sounds exciting. Enhancements to proxy workflows, automated tools for social media cropping, so reformatting for different aspect ratios, editorial workflow improvements, updates to motion and compressor.
Oh, there it is. So yeah,
the proxy workflow actually is that's one that's been really huge for us. Surprisingly,
I haven't seen anything. Where are you reading this, Philip?
There's a link in the chat.
I put a link in the chat. I dropped a link in the chat. The Apple Newsroom release. This
is going to be a broadcast. Oh, here we go. Look at this. Found it.
I still don't see it on the App Store, but
yeah, I think it's going to take a little while.
App Store either.
If you go to fcp.co, it's got an article on there. It's obviously the YouTube video. It's got the bits off the website and Felipe's video, which is...
Here we go. Proxy workflows. Wait, there's a link to a video?
Yeah, we have the wrong poster frame, but it's all in there.
So let's see. That video
adjust audio crossfades. What? Can you default?
Yes, there is an audio crossfade.
It's the little things in life, isn't it?
You know, I'll tell you, it is funny how the littlest things can get you super kind of pumped up. And it's
you wouldn't think the inclusion of proxy URLs links inside the XML would be that huge, but it enhances builder proxy workflows. It lets you do thumbnails from formats that aren't otherwise supported by AV Foundation, even with the Pro Apps codecs. So, a little thing like that has actually made a big improvement to at least 2 of our apps and the workflow around them.
So can I...
a lot of XML stuff there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, should we go through it one by one?
Yeah, I think we should from the top. What do we see?
We lost you, Chris.
Has been sliced out.
Yeah.
The mix pre died. The mix pre thinks that Chris is noise and is just canceling him out.
Who wants to take the lead on this thing and run through these features one by one?
You're getting the features from the release notes or from the newsroom?
If you go on fcp.co,
I'm looking at the newsroom.
If you go on fcp.co, the first article there has a list of them.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
we do hear you.
Weird. Zoom like locked up, and I clicked on a bunch of stuff and nothing worked. So there's a link on fcp.co too.
Yep. There's an article on there, and we're on there, and Felipe's excellent video, and the improvements or the updates are on there.
So Felipe, you've obviously been playing with this for a while. I won't ask too many details.
No, I'm just really fast. It came out, I installed it, I analyzed it, and recorded and edited.
Years ago,
the only reason you could edit it that quickly is because you're using Final Cut, right? If you're cutting your new video in Premiere, you'd be editing through the night.
And I would be exporting. Yeah, it would take a little while.
Okay, so let's talk about, first of all, what is this update called, Felipe?
10.4.9.
10.4.9. Okay, and I got to tell you, I literally just, while we were all talking, I launched Final Cut because I was like, wait, what version are we on? So I'd forgotten 10.4.8. So 10.4.8 becomes 10.4.9. Is this a disappointment that it's not 10.5, or is this a good update?
Honestly, if it would be up to me, 10.9, 10.4.9, 10.5 literally just became marketing names, honestly. Because although it's a point update, the amount of stuff that was included there was as much, or if not more, than when we got to 10.2 and 10.3. So
generally speaking, the guideline is that if it's a major point update, then you'll see significant interface changes. If it's no significant interface changes, with the same main point but a supplementary point update. That's a general rule of thumb about how software.
But 10.2 wasn't a significant. Hold on, which one that had the 3D titles? Was 10.2, right, or 10.3?
10.2 was where we got libraries.
Okay, so 10.3 was the one with the 3D titles. That was not a huge UI change.
Yeah, but in general,
well, it isn't really the question though. When Big Sur finally rolls out, that's a branding change for Apple. So, do you think all of these Pro apps will get an equivalent branding change where the Roman numeral X gets dropped and it's just
this?
Final Cut
This
Pro
is the Big Sur. This is the Big Sur and Apple Silicon release. We've had it running on Apple Silicon for a while now.
Well, it's compatible with it, but do you think there will be some sort of other release?
No, this already has all of the work that went into building Apple Silicon support. It's in the app that was released 10 minutes ago. That's one of the reasons. And so it's a lot of work for the development team. I think Chris, on another chat, you said, on a Facebook, Twitter, you said, what about the poor Final Cut team? Metal to metal, to OpenCL to metal change, all these different things that they've had to do just to stay in the same place because Apple technology around them moves on.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've done.
Yeah, I'm working. Never mind. I'm having tons of problems here. So yeah, no, I think that I agree, Felipe. A lot of it is just marketing, like it's just a name. But the bottom line is there's tons of things in here that as I watch your video, I'm realizing that
lost you again. We lost you again.
Well, I'll say it, watching your video, Felipe, I mean, it says 10.4.9, but there is a lot in it. If you go through the stuff, you get to see the stuff. And also, I spotted for the first time that, we're talking about Final Cut here, but in Motion, you can import 3D models.
Yeah.
Which is, which is a slight update. Lots of people have been moaning about the fact that, Motion hasn't had any love for a while. But now you can import 3D models. You can use the lights, particle emitters with them. Apparently, from reading the stuff, for me, that's huge.
Huh. And Compressor also has some updates as well. I don't have here right in front of me what those updates are. I'm trying to find it here, but all of them.
Why don't we start with
some
Final Cut
and
just run through the updates in there for anyone who's watching and wants to know what's actually new, since we've all.
So let's do this. Let's do this, Joseph. I think that what's interesting is with all updates is there are the updates that Apple wants to tell us about because somebody in marketing said, this is good to talk about. This is good to talk about. This is good to talk about. But then there's the ones that you have to really dig for. So let's spend a few minutes on the marketing updates. And then I want to pick Felipe's brain about, and Philip's about some of the more detailed, I'll call it under the hood stuff that frankly makes a big difference, but nobody's sitting around saying, good golly, I really need this feature until they have it. And they go, oh, wow, that's much better. You know what I mean? I mean, there's a lot of those things. I've been saying this for years that Final Cut solves problems for editors that editors didn't even know they had. So first, the first thing on the page is enhanced proxy workflows. What do we know about this?
It's huge. First of all, we can relink proxies.
And make custom sizes.
Yeah. Second, you can choose the encoder, the codec, sorry, in ProRes Proxy or H.264. So people that are working from home and need to do remote workflows and put stuff in the cloud and transfer to someone else a version of the proxies, you can put 540p H.264s encoded by Final Cut, for example. And the other person on the other side just relinks.
So much more flexibility. Now, does that... never mind. That was a dumb question I was going to ask.
But bigger than that. Okay, I can tell you, bigger than that. What's the biggest pain in proxy workflow in Final Cut?
So here's my biggest
when you
beef.
switch to proxy, all of your media that's not proxy disappears. So the mixed playback, that's huge.
So how does that happen, Felipe? How do I, like, for example, one of the reasons why I never touch proxy myself is I tend to make a lot of keyable movies in After Effects that I lay into my timeline. And those, if I proxy those, I lose my alpha channel. Can I?
Well, now you have proxy preferred mode, which means that you're gonna play back proxy for the media that you have proxy and play back original for the media you have original. So for example, if your stuff with alpha, you just do not make proxy and you make proxy for the other stuff and put in the proxy preferred mode, you're gonna play back your alpha original and the proxy for the other things.
Very cool. So that's a giant deal, because a lot of times if you're working with, you know, big heavy 6K footage, or I don't know, I know Lee was here, Mr. 8K. Yeah, you might want to proxy that just so you have a more fluid timeline as you're working.
The other thing is, I don't know if you guys noticed, but there was another release. We can talk a little bit later, and it's related to Final Cut as well, and performance and workflows. But the other thing in proxy is that if you wanted to do a pure proxy workflow, you had to keep track manually of your graphics or of your audio, because those don't have really proxies of their own. And now there is a mode that you can do that basically allows you to create a to-go library. And when you select to say, just send proxy to that library, it's gonna say, okay, the stuff that doesn't have proxy will be copied as well. Stuff that is not supported to have proxy, like audio and graphics. So when you create this to-go library, it's gonna send only your proxy, for example, if you so choose, but also the stuff that doesn't have proxy, like stills and audio.
So as I'm sitting here, I'm realizing that there's basically 3 types of updates. There's the updates where they give me something I needed. They gave me something I didn't know I needed, or they give me something I don't care about. So I think some of this stuff falls into the, I mean, I've been doing a lot of training where I'm teaching people who don't know how to distinguish between a dissolve and a cut. And so some of this stuff's like, I don't know, I don't even know what proxy means. But for those who are trying to use proxy efficiently, this is a big deal. So it's like one of those things like, oh, I didn't realize I was having such a problem with that. Yes, this will be better. So this is like I didn't know I needed this, right?
So speaking of things you need, what about some of the other things editors have been asking for, like the ability to flatten a multicam container in the timeline, or a mixer panel, which I've given up hope that we'll ever see that.
I can speak to the flattened multicam issue.
Okay.
We've looked at this a lot, and superficially flattened multicam is really easy. We flatten multicam in the translation 10 to CC because we're going into a track structure, and we can do that. The problem with flattening a multicam inside Final Cut Pro 10 is it will work, and you can make it work for about 70% of the circumstances that exist. The other 30%, you can't really make it becomes too complex. The math just becomes too complex to work out where things should be. And, you know, Greg's pretty smart, and he's looked at it a number of times, and every time he's just come out swearing profusely and said, no, we're not doing that.
Well, yeah, but as an editor, I would say everybody else can do it. So
but everyone else is working in track structures, and we can flatten it into a track structure really easily. Flattening it into Final Cut Pro 10 spine structure is not easy. It just can't be done.
I totally understand that, but from an Apple engineering standpoint, my answer would be excuses are like,
Put it as a developer, as a person who deals with these sorts of issues every single day, when your developer says no, it can't be done after looking at it the third time, first time I'm a little dubious. Never say never, but when they've looked at it a third time and still come back to the same, these issues that are fundamental to the structure of the way clips attached to a spine within Final Cut Pro 10 will not work in about 30% of the circumstances. You cannot reliably calculate where the clip should attach to the new spine.
Very interesting. Okay, so proxy workflows.
Can we go back to proxies?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's go back to proxies. There is a workflow that I think I understand in this, but I haven't been able to work with because I've been working on this solo. So those of us who've been working with it more, tell me if I'm right on this, but you can now start with a proxy workflow, meaning let's say I get footage and I generate proxies. I send those to my editor remotely. He starts a project, sends it back to me. I can now define that footage that is the primary footage. I can say, no, this is actually the proxy. Here's the real footage, right? That's a workflow that exists now, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is correct.
Yeah, that's huge. Because before that, if I wanted to do a proxy workflow, I had to build the project to start with before I could hand it off to a remote editor. But now that I can just dump the footage, let him start, and then pick up where he left off with the real stuff, that's huge. To me, that's an enormous workflow change.
Yeah. So does it mean that, Felipe, you can do the kind of like offline online? Somebody could turn up with a load of proxies for you, and you could
Not
edit,
only that.
you could edit away, and then somebody goes, right, I've got the red, the red stuff's come in. So the proxies could come electronically to you, and then the red stuff gets shoved, gets DHL'd to you, and it comes to you a week later, and you go, right, I'll tell you what, overnight I'll get all these in, and then you can relink the red media to those proxies. Because
not only that.
Yeah, that's more of an offline online.
Yeah, but that's not new. You've been able to do that in Final Cut.
Yeah, but now within their own Final Cut internal way, because the problem with using proxies with different frame size and swapping by originals, for example, is that anything that has masks or resolution dependent adjustments would break when you connect back to the big resolution, right? But the other thing is you can also create those proxies outside Final Cut. So you can have a facility that already has all of the infrastructure to transcode and create proxies, and they just send you the proxy and you say, okay, just start working with this, and later on you get the originals. For me, this is huge. And like Philip said earlier, the fact that now you can have an extension or a third-party application that can send an XML that the address of the media is HTTP or HTTPS, and is going to download that media, refer to that media. It's really great. There's a lot of opportunity for media asset managements right now.
And I would think it's a little step towards a more collaborative workflow. I mean, you don't necessarily do all of these things in one big jump. I'd say these are steps towards having a more collaborative workflow. But I know nothing. I literally know nothing.
Okay, I have.
Sounds like you don't want to work with other people, Philip.
Well, that's true. I don't. I have no real need for any collaborative workflow because the other office is over there and he doesn't do any videos.
Well, but let's talk about collaborative workflows. Okay, that's again something editors have been asking for, and Felipe being here on the panel is really the only answer right now that exists to that through PostLab. Do you think Apple ever sees that as enough of a base to warrant putting the development into Final Cut 10, given where the application is in general and the market that they seem to be addressing?
Yes.
I mean, my gut feeling is professional editors are a nice to have market for them, but that they've broadened the base to a much bigger.
Every school that uses Final Cut Pro 10 wants collaboration. It's just not the niche of professional editors. In fact, Bradley schooled me on this. I was thinking, there's such a small group of people that need collaboration. I mean, it's probably 5,000-10,000 people, but even if it's 20,000 people, that's such a small subset of the 3 million plus users of Final Cut Pro 10. But, it's in schools, it's in small organizations, it's in newsrooms. These people that are not, professional editors, they do something else as editing is part of what they do. That's a big, that's where most of Final Cut lives. And that's a collaborative market. People want collaboration in that market.
I think education is much bigger than that, actually. But the thing with collaboration and PostLab and how Apple sees all of that, I think it's too much of a coincidence that the exact features that in case Apple would add to Final Cut would make PostLab and collaborative workflow through PostLab so much more powerful were the features that were added. So I think it's too much of a coincidence that these exact features that would make us not be jumping through hoops and do it properly are here right now. So I think if I see from that perspective that there's a big future there.
Right, but that's my point. Is it from an Apple standpoint, does it make more sense just to stay out of that territory and let third parties fill in the gaps and support them in whatever way makes sense? Or is there some reason for Apple to try to develop that internally?
Keeping in mind, oh, sorry, Felipe. Yeah.
No, you can go ahead. I was just saying that's just level of effort for the amount of people that are affected too, I think.
I think Apple's approach on this type of thing, what do we call it? Sherlocking somebody, is if the developer, if the third-party developer is doing a good job, I think they'd rather just stay out unless Apple felt that that the third-party developer was scratching an itch but not doing it well.
Yeah.
That's my thought. And I know that they take a certain amount of pride when they do something, and I can't say why, but an interesting story I might tell you off camera one day, where they, you know, they're like, nah, no, ours is better. You know, I mean, no, we do it better.
Yeah, the other issue with Apple and things like collaboration is that the Final Cut Pro team are part of Apple. Therefore, they need to work with Apple frameworks, and the collaborative frameworks that Apple have provided for developers haven't been as reliable as professional editors might want them to be until quite recently. So they haven't, until maybe 18 months, 2 years ago, they didn't have the Apple frameworks and the Apple infrastructure that they need to start working on collaboration that is reliable and consistent. Apple have taken 3 goes at getting something like CloudKit to work for this collaboration. It's the third time's a charm, but the first 2 goes.
Can I ask, being the non-developer in the room, what is CloudKit?
CloudKit is a way of synchronizing all of your media, your documents, so that one person, you can be working on multiple documents on the document across multiple devices.
Okay, so kind of like what Numbers and Pages are doing.
No,
there.
it's not. It's more like the device will turn up in all the Numbers document will turn up on all your devices. So it's that. It's not what the additional collaboration that Apple have internally that they don't publish to us at third parties. More's the pity, because we want to use it on Builder. Is what they do with Numbers, Pages, Notes, where you can share a Pages document. You can work on that. These work on documents. The Notes is the only one that isn't a document, and there's most akin to Final Cut Pro 10, because Notes is a database structured app like Final Cut Pro 10 is. So it's, you know, they think
your lights.
They now have the frameworks within Apple to make this possible, you know, and it takes 2 to 3 years from the time you can make something theoretically possible until the time it's stable and good enough to release is always 2 to 3 years. So, you know, I'd say if they haven't done collaboration in the next 2 years, they're not going to do it. But if I would think it's probably on the cards if it's something they want to do in the next 2 years.
Yeah, just to go back to the proxies, because I mean, Felipe can tell me this. They have to be a certain size, but you can have, is it H.264 you can have as well now, where it was, or was it ProRes LT, was it?
Like within Final Cut, you can create ProRes Proxy and H.264. You can still link HEVC, for example, if you create it outside Final Cut. And the frame size, it's irrelevant to the most. The same rules as before are still applying. It just needs to have the same duration to the frame, same audio channels, and same frame rate. Other than that, it's like you can experiment quite a lot. So
there's a potential workflow that, based on what you just said, I think may not work. If anybody follows the show of hands, anybody follow Blackmagic Hardware? Anyone Bueller? Okay, so they just released the ATEM Mini ISO, which has the ability to record H.264 ISOs right at a hard drive attached to it. But when you hit record, it also, if you're using Blackmagic cameras, it will hit record. You can tell it to program, or you can tell it to hit record on the cameras as well. I would bet those files won't be exactly the same length.
Yeah,
so,
I think
you couldn't use those files as proxies to the camera media.
Even the proxies from Red cameras, sometimes they are slightly different, and then you can't link them. So it's even that one is even difficult to rely on. It's like 99% good. If you ask Patrick Southern, they've done that workflow where you're recording Red RAW plus a ProRes proxy. And for the most part, it was linking properly, but then for a few of them, it wouldn't. So then
in my NAB talk a couple of years ago, I was whining, I guess is the best way you could say it, about why can't I just relink it. I know it's not exactly the same, but just let me tell you it's close enough. Just do this. And I said in the talk, I don't understand why it is. I don't know, maybe it's some technical reason. And without revealing any names, about a week later, I got a message from somebody at Apple and they said, it's tech reasons. Sorry. Anyway, so Proxy, did we miss anything, Felipe? Anything else we want to talk about Proxy?
We talked about the proxy preferred and when you could probably choose to use that, right? And I think proxy preferred is going to be a choice for a lot of people that are working with, let's say, with red media together with other medias, for example, or you, for example, working with alpha. But then, I don't know, I sent a message to Peter. Peter, do you want to mention that thing that I told you about, or do you want to just go through the list first?
I think it's related. Go through the list. I think, Lee, are you with us?
I think so.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
We hear you.
Yay! Because one of the things you'll like is obviously I haven't used 10.4.9, but more controls of ProRes RAW.
Yes, it's so if you go into the inspector when you clicked on a file and go to add views, you know how you can go to the bottom right hand corner, bottom left hand corner of the inspector, click edit inspector view, and in the search function type in ISO or temperature. And now with ProRes RAW, you can adjust the ISO, which is great, but you can also adjust the temperature of a clip of ProRes RAW, which I know is something that a lot of people have been asking about.
Right, because before with ProRes before, it was just kind of like in it comes and that's it, wasn't it? It just treats it as a...
Well, I mean, you could adjust it, because if you open up a a color wheel and you look towards the bottom, there's a temperature slider there, but it didn't work in the same way that we're used to with other types of RAW, so it wasn't as easy to work out what you were doing.
Lee, you sound great, but you're very quiet. Can you gain up a little bit? Do you have facilities to make that happen?
Is that better?
A little more?
Is that better?
Yeah, maybe back just a touch.
There's one thing that's worth mentioning.
It's 1:30 a.m. I'm trying not to wake up the household.
Okay. Go, Felipe.
Now, there's one thing that's worth mentioning about the ProRes RAW. It's not going to work on previous ProRes RAW footage, only from now forward, and it depends on support on camera manufacturers. I'm trying to find here a list of the current supported cameras.
Yeah,
but...
so Felipe, so that list, it's short, unfortunately. So the ISO feature actually is supported across older versions. So for example, I've got ProRes RAW stuff that I shot 2 years ago, and the ISO stuff works. So ISO works pretty much on everything. Unfortunately, the temperature function at the moment only works on the Nikon Z6, Z7, the Panasonic S1H, Vericam LT, and another one from Panasonic. The EVA one, obviously. And then it's coming, or they're not entirely sure, on the Fuji GFX 100, the EZ cam. Is that correct? Is that EZ cam? And I think that's about it at the moment. So unfortunately, at the moment, the temperature function to adjust the temperature is not supported on any Canons or any Sonys. So as I understand it, that is a function that needs to come from the metadata that's coming from the camera. So everyone who shoots with Sony or Canon, talk to anyone that you know at Sony and Canon and nag the living daylights out of them for an update so that their cameras will support that metadata push out.
And does it need an update on the Atmos recorder as well?
With the temperature thing, I think so. I'm not sure. I have been able to get clarification on that. But again, as I said, the ISO seems to work across everything that's ever been shot. So even old stuff, ISO, you're pretty much sweet on everything.
I'm going to import some
temperature, we're still not sure. Yeah.
It seems to me with the ProRes RAW that what we're missing is a proper camera profile for every camera that's now ProRes RAW compatible.
Yeah, it's it's a challenge because there's a lot of sort of different people that need to play nice with each other, just with the nature of how it all works. So, you know, Apple can do sort of as much as they can, but they would need to, and again, I'm not an expert in this, but from what I understand, it's a case of that sort of as I understand, the manufacturers, so Sony, Canon, whoever, need to give either Apple or Atomus a little bit of a peek behind the curtain in terms of what they're doing with the color profiles. And it's whether, you know, I'm sure it's just a bunch of different buildings of lawyers need to get together and agree on who gets to look at what.
Well, they already have that to some extent. If you shoot with those cameras and you shoot log, then there's a Rec 709 LUT that already exists. So it doesn't seem to me like it's that far of a, you know, of an issue, but obviously
one would hope so. Yeah.
Okay, well, it's interesting to know, you know, when they say ProRes RAW and you can adjust it, I mean, you will be able to adjust it. It's just that, you know, the camera guys have got a bit of work to do and everything like that. But I can see updates coming through relatively quickly on that, I would imagine. You know what happens? They put an update for the camera drive or something like that, or whatever it is, and then there's something in the metadata or the thing that somebody spots, and then it's out there.
The obviously, this update does not include support for Blackmagic RAW, I would imagine.
Yeah, I'd love to know what the sticking point is there, because when I've heard Grant at Blackmagic say, "Oh, it's all open. Anybody who wants to use it can use it." And I've heard other people are like, well, let's not talk about that. And so does anybody want to talk off? You know, it's just us. It's kind of off the record. Does anybody know anything about why it's such a sticking point?
Well, Red created R3D. They created the codec and they created the plugin for Final Cut and the Mac. Canon has Canon RAW. They created the thing. They created the plugin. Any other? Arri created their RAW, they created the plugin. So I'm not understanding why Blackmagic creates the codec and then Apple has to create the plugin if everyone else is creating their own plugins.
There is actually an API so that camera manufacturers can create their plugin so that Apple doesn't have to be involved. Although I have heard that Blackmagic are waiting on Apple. So Apple or Blackmagic is certainly blaming Apple for the problem, but I'm with you, Felipe. I'm not sure why everyone else can do it and Blackmagic, unless there's a political issue that's separate from the technical ones.
I would love to see it
issue. If it's a political issue, it sounds like it's on Apple's front because, and unless Grant was completely lying, but in a recent one of his, you know, new product announcement videos, he's like, "Oh, it's all open, and anybody can use it." I'm wondering if there's a market for just making that plugin.
Well,
when he
says that, what he's saying is we've released an SDK. Now it's on you. That's
understood.
And that's what Apple says is we've released an SDK. Now it's on you.
Yeah, right.
If there was only a company that was really good at taking all that data and connecting it together.
Actually, image data I'm not interested in. It's got to be metadata. Essence, who cares about the essence?
Anything else about RAW in this particular release that's exciting or
performance improvements on metal-driven plugins from Red and Canon? So they're showing they've actually incorporated the new Metal 2-based plugins that they talked about.
Finally,
I saw somebody posted some graph, and it was like, you know, exporting from Premiere, and it was like this long, and exporting from Resolve, and it was like this long. It was like exporting from Final Cut, and it was like, come on, why aren't more people using?
You know what? I'm being able to play Red RAW 8K unrendered in better performance on my laptop on an 8K timeline.
I've done a number of those, performance comparisons, and doing some of the reviews like the iMac review that's on FCP.co. And you really only are, as good as the media that you have available, right? So if you do a performance test that's all H.264 or it's all ProRes, That's going to be completely different than if it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, some raw, some non-raw, and then you decide what you want to export to. So if you export to ProRes, you're going to get different results than if you go HEVC. And then that's different whether it's an iMac, iMac Pro, MacBook Pro, whatever. So you got to take all of those with a grain of salt and read what the reviewer did and say, okay, is this the workflow I use?
Yeah, but from the perspective, for example, a friend of mine, he has 2 RED cameras. He only shoots RED RAW. He shoots 6K and 8K. He tends to finish in 4K timelines. But every time that he goes to work, he first needs to create proxies. That's the very first thing. So he needs to wait hours and hours and hours for proxies to be created. But right now, with this update of RED RAW, with their plugin, he can literally import the media and immediately start editing. You can play back full frame 8K on an 8K timeline. So if you put in 4K as well, it's going to play back without needing to create those proxies. So for me, that's big. And then improves also the speed in which you create the proxies, which is another one. And then increases the speed in which you're going to export from R3D to ProRes or H264. I see that as a very welcome change. And then with the proxy preferred option on the viewer, that you can transcode those RED RAWs and the rest just leave it on original.
Guys, I'm just going to have to go and do something else for half an hour. I'll be back. And if you haven't talked about the motion 3D objects, I'd really like to know a lot about those, because I think that's going to be excellent. All right, I'll see you in a while.
We'll see you in a few minutes, Peter. Have a good phone call. I'd like to move on, if y'all don't mind. Let's talk about the social media cropping.
PhotoJoseph, where is he?
I'll throw shade out right away. That's a copy of what Adobe did 6 months ago.
Not
Except
a full copy, though.
I was going to say, is this just a Me Too feature?
Well, it can't be a Me Too feature. Then, as I said earlier, it takes 2 to 3 years to get a feature through the system and into it. So it was likely with parallel development, but Adobe got there first. But
well, do they just, all seriousness though, are they doing any sort of artificial intelligence or machine learning, whatever you want to apply to it, the way Adobe is?
Yes, it says right in the release.
Okay.
Yes, but they are not doing keyframes to keep that subject in frame. They are averaging everything.
Yeah.
They pick a framing and they don't try and track with it.
Yeah,
So
they're not
is it
tracking.
editable?
Yes, absolutely, it's editable. There's a new little button. Actually, there's a new little button in the viewer when you go to transform that lets you see the entire video outside of the frames that it's cropped. So that's kind of cool because it's easy to sort of adjust and see what's going on.
So Chris, when you said it's not tracking, so if I've got a person standing on the left side of the frame and they walk across to the right side of the frame, it does not follow that person.
It's going to be in the center. They're going to average those, and it's going to end up being right in the center.
Felipe, does it appear with the prevalence of all of the, it seems like a lot of, I don't know if this is like some API that opened or whatever, but it seems like a lot of plugins have trackers built into them now. Do you think it's possible that somebody could hotwire a Mocha into this average cropping and just say, follow this person walking across the frame?
I think Philip will probably answer this better, but if Apple somehow exposed the analysis log, I think they could do that and just say, okay, you already analyzed the movement, so let's now just keyframe everything. I don't know. Maybe Philip, what do you think?
I mean, they probably have the technology that just
he doesn't deal with images.
No.
He doesn't deal with images.
It still sounds to me like there's an awful lot of manual intervention that's required.
And similarly with the Adobe version of it, I mean, that's not as automatic as Adobe implies in the videos.
Well, in the testing I've done, it's pretty successful. It's tweaking rather than
Oliver, thank goodness there's manual stuff required. Otherwise, we wouldn't be required.
True.
Yeah, I gotta say, anytime somebody like touts like, "Oh, it's all just automatic. Why can't I just click a button?" I was like, you know what? Hire an editor.
Yeah, I need a job.
No.
Do you guys want to see how it looks like the smart conform thing?
I would love to.
Yeah, show it to us, Felipe. I'd love to
put
see
it on your screen and do something.
Okay. Do I have permission to do screen sharing, or
You will be able to screen share in just a moment. I have to make you a co-host.
Okay, and
there you go.
Meanwhile, it looks like I am going to have to quit because I'm on Catalina and I haven't shared the screen before, so I have to quit the application and come back. But once I'm back,
we're waiting for him to come back. It looks like Final Cut is in the App Store now, but I'm not seeing Motion or Compressor updated there yet.
Yeah, I saw that Final Cut is there to do.
So do you guys see my Final Cut?
Hello.
Yep, we see you.
Okay, so I have here.
Motion is updatable.
Oh, is it?
Okay. So
I
have here
for the app.
A normal 16:9 project, right? A lot of it doesn't really have a subject. So, for example, a car maybe is the subject. Here, the mug is the subject. The waves are nothing. The lags, nothing. Maybe the gift, the dog for sure. And if I come to this vacation trip project and I duplicate that project as, I'm gonna have the option here to create a new project. And now under video, I have the option to create a vertical or a square version of that. So if I choose vertical, I have here now a few preset resolutions. I'm going to create a 1080. And
those
right
numbers
next
look familiar, but slightly odd.
And then we have the smart conform. That's all I need to do. And then click OK. And Final Cut is going to do the analysis of the clips. And of course, depending on the type of clips you have and how long the project is, it's going to take a certain amount of time. But once it's done, there it is. The car passes by my screen. And then I have my mug.
That found that. The wave is interesting.
Legs.
That's pretty ambiguous.
Gift. Dog. The
logo's logo's not great.
Sorry. And here, so it does a really good job figuring out.
Couple questions, Felipe. Couple questions. One, is this a timeline of your footage, or is this something that Apple gave you as a demo?
No, these are footage from Pexels.com. Those are footage that people contribute online and let you use for free.
So then can you click on the little thing that allows us to see the image outside the frame?
Yeah, so if we come here to transform and enable that, we have this brand new icon here, and then we can see everything that's out of the frame.
Felipe, just so you know, the icon didn't appear on our screens.
Yeah, we don't.
Oh, it's because I'm just sharing Final Cut.
You shared Final Cut, not your whole screen. Yeah.
Yeah. To share the whole screen, I definitely need to restart Zoom, I think. Let me try that.
I don't think so.
Let's try. Can you guys see now?
Yes, we can.
Yes. We can see it now.
Okay. I'm going to just make this a little bit bigger.
Thank you for that call out, Lee.
Yeah, thanks. So transform button. And then after transform button, we have this new one here that then you're able to see everything that's out of the frame.
Nice.
So if I come to the next one, and then the next one, and when we look at what Apple has done with the smart conform, we can see here all the values that have changed, and it changed the spatial conform to fill on all the clips.
So I think the only one that I disagree with from a framing standpoint, I think the coffee mug might have just got lucky, but I think the only one I disagreed with was.
Oh, I lost your audio.
We lost Ben.
You're about to review which one that you're disagreed with.
The tension is killing me.
If I would have to guess, if I had to guess which one he would disagree with,
I'd say the fireworks.
I would take the car.
Oh. I think the fireworks are a little off to me.
The fireworks.
There we go.
You're back, Chris. Yeah, the fireworks could go a little bit to the left here.
Yeah.
I think so. So now you can adjust that. Just drag it over. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, oh, look at you. You're editing.
Ooh.
What a shame to ask an editor to edit. This is so. I mean, I look at it as an intelligent first guess, and then do your job. Proxy preferred. Look at you showing off. You just want to keep talking about proxy, don't you?
Look at that. I have these proxies that were created on Kino, and I put the time code there just so we could easily see that they were created outside Final Cut.
Okay, clever.
It's a great feature.
Yeah. Okay,
You're a
enough of
smart
my
guy.
screen. Well, we can come back to my screen later.
Can I just give you a practical idea of how great the proxy? I know we keep going on about the proxy thing, but particularly for people like me who live in an internet desert, where
it's kind of a show about Final Cut, but it's really
it is. We could even make a smaller version of the show somehow, maybe. But so to give you a practical, because one of the biggest challenges for me in Australia is because we're far away from things, and I think there's only like one cable that connects us to the rest of the world, so, and we share that. So, you know, uploads is a challenge, and remote work and all that jazz. So to give you an idea, I had a library that I'd created which was about 40 gigs in size.
really
And
more of
when pardon?
I didn't say anything.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, so
oh, Fen, I think some of your audio from like 10 minutes ago just caught up to us.
Well, this is what I'm saying. I am speaking to you from tomorrow. So, you know, so library 40 gigs in size. When you make it sort of normal proxy versions of that, so you're just going to make a ProRes Proxy, that went from 40 to 20 gigs. So we made it half in size. But then when I used the new H.264, and even at the same composition, it went from 40 to 3.8. And being able to send like that, I could practically send.
So what you're saying is smaller.
Yeah.
It's huge. That's smaller.
Yeah,
that would be smaller.
Smaller is good.
And you can and correct me if I'm wrong. You can go even further than that. You could go a smaller frame size, because a lot of times you really just need to cut the content or the words. I don't need all this resolution and pretty.
Absolutely. One little caveat to be aware of is that, and you get a little pop-up warning that tells you about this, that if you try and move, so if you let's say you try and create a transfer library, so you're grabbing all of your proxies from your existing library, put it into a transfer library so that you can then send it to someone else. If it's HDR footage, a little warning will pop up and say, hey, we can't make H.264s of these because it would look there. I believe that's the technical term. And we're just going to create ProRes Proxy versions.
So and how is that spelled?
I believe it's BLE.
So you just mentioned HDR, so I was wondering if there is something in this release that expands upon the HDR side of what they've been doing so far.
Not necessarily directly HDR. There is a cool function that's been added to Compressor, which allows you to burn in a LUT and give you some manual controls over that in Compressor. So for example, let's say you've cut something and you want to send it to, you know, one person but in 5 different formats. You can just burn a LUT from within Compressor and do that from within Compressor, which is nice.
Compressor.
Do you know if that LUT is read by YouTube
in California?
I haven't been able to test that yet. So I don't know yet.
Yeah, because the HDR process, the HDR workflow with YouTube is a bit of a pain right now, where if you upload HDR, it does its own LUT to 709, and it's, you know, it might be okay, it might not be okay. You can create your own custom LUT, but the process of doing that, as far as I know, you have to do this in Resolve. There's not really a way to do this in Final Cut because you can't generate a LUT out of Final Cut, at least not with third-party tools. But then you have to do this whole command line embedding of the LUT into the file before you upload it to YouTube. It's a real pain in the ass, and it is literally command line, and that is the official tools from YouTube. If Compressor was able to do that, that would be freaking huge. But I hadn't seen anything like that yet. I'll have to check that out.
It'll be interesting to see how much Apple plays nice with the rest of the world in this, because there's a big push to go ACES, and you know that really hasn't even touched Final Cut that I know of, with the exception of the guys at Color Finale are doing a little bit of stuff with ACES, but Resolve's in, and you know, all of the big name color correctors are in, but so is Adobe a little bit. Media Composer starting to get there. And I'm just wondering whether that's even on their roadmap.
I don't know. You still can't export a LUT from Final Cut, right? Generate a LUT in Final Cut.
Yeah, you don't yet. No.
Not from Final Cut. You can from some of the third-party tools. So,
right.
I think Film Convert lets you export a LUT.
Yeah. The process of generating your own SDR LUT from an HDR master is unfortunately a bit tedious, and it's one of the things I think that's restricting people from doing HDR on a broader scale. It's just at least for YouTube delivery, it's a pain in the ass.
Well, I think for anything delivery, that I dabble with a lot of HDR stuff, and the biggest challenge I find is delivery, because it's a Tower of Babel at the moment, unfortunately, where you've sort of got, well, it's going to work there, and then is it going to work? Oh, it's not working there. Wait, I'll change this. Oh, now it's not working there, and it's a game of Jenga.
I was
even devices that are supposedly play HDR aren't really playing HDR, like the iPad, right? The iPad and the iPhone, they're HDR playback, but from YouTube, but you don't get that. You get a down converted, you get an SDR version that's maybe a little bit enhanced. But
okay, so the official word on the automated social media cropping is, it's cool. It's a good start, but we still want to adjust stuff, and the jury is out on croppability of stuff. Hey, Felipe, in your test, did you do any square tests?
I've done, and generally speaking, you get better results just because you have more space, right? But yeah, it works exactly the same way.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be very interested in trying that. I tell you, the preponderance of by the ways in the post world these days is driving me crazy. Oh, by the way, can you make me verticals? Oh, by the way, can you make me a square version of that? Oh, by the way, can you take that 2 weeks of graphic design you just did and just make that fit in a square now? Oh, by the way.
Chris, I hope you're also doing, oh, by the way, it's going to cost more.
Oh, of course. Yeah. But, good. Or like, by the way, I need, 6 different thumbnails of each person that's in that video, so I have something to choose from for our webpage. Like, just, oh, by the way. Yeah, you'd think I'd learn to just do this stuff now. So let's see what else we got here. Editorial workflow improvements. Can you explain, Felipe?
No.
Already talked about a lot of those.
No, I think all of it together, no?
Yeah.
Okay.
360. What's the new 360 stuff? Stabilized stereoscopic 3D video. Okay. With separate streams for each eye.
It seems to put a lot of effort into 360. Is it really happening that much? Because I pretty much never see it except the occasional YouTube, automatic camera videos.
My fear is, and I see this happen with production companies, I see it happen with developers, is like every once in a while there's like some person who's influential enough to make the decisions, and they're just like, yeah, this is going to be a thing, we got to do this, and it's just like, ugh. And I think my take on, if I haven't said it before, and I probably have, my take on 360 video is it is the absolute antithesis of filmmaking. It could not be further from filmmaking or cinematography. Because, I mean, if you think about what you do, I saw a quick story. I saw a great clip. It was Kubrick shooting The Shining. And he's on, and it was a behind the scenes shot. And there was a scene where Jack is leaning up against the door and he's trying to get out of the freezer or whatever. And Kubrick, like, you see it happen in his eyes. He's like, oh, I got an idea. Hold on. And he grabs his little, I'm a director viewer thing. And he lays down on the floor and he looks right up at Jack, who's got his hands like this. And he goes, okay, now look down a little bit and do your line. He goes, oh, this is going to be great. And like, you see this moment of inspiration. You see this point where he says, I want to put the camera here with this many millimeters of field of view, and I want to point it this way. Exactly what 360 video is not. It's like, just put a camera in the middle of the room. You can look at whatever you want.
Well,
I'm going to push back a little.
That's not completely the case, though. I mean, there are some situations where 360 makes sense. So, for example, a travel log kind of thing, right? And what the effort goes into there is controlling the view that the viewer has. So if you're following a host, you really need to pay attention to where the host is in the frame, how you're going to hide the cameraman. So there is an awful lot of work that goes into that. It's just not everybody's cup of tea, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not a lot of work. I'm not trying to imply that it's a cop out, that it's easy. I'm saying it's a cop out because I want a trained eye to tell me what to look at.
Well, here's the thing. I would actually push back a little bit and say I think you're right in the sense that it takes something away from the.
That's why you're my friend, because you think I'm right.
Well, I think you're semi-right, so I can be your semi-friend.
I'm sorry. Keep going.
Because if you're doing something narrative with 360, I think it actually behooves the editor and the script writer a lot more, because you have to use the script and often sound to direct your audience, because you can't tell because normally, you know, if you're doing a normal sort of non-360, we use the camera angles and all that kind of stuff to tell the audience what to look at. Whereas as you say, we can't do that in 360. So the way we need to do that in 360 as editors is either through script, which we have semi-control over, not much. So, you know, someone goes, hey, look over there, and it points the audience to there. But if we've got the stereoscopic sound, which we don't have yet in some applications, you can actually use sound to, you know, the audience hears something to the right, they turn to the right. Now in narrative stuff, I'm actually seeing a fair bit of 360 stuff come across my desk, because here in my state of Victoria and in Melbourne, we are still in lockdown and I miss people so much. But what we can do is I'm seeing a lot of real estate work come through where people can't go and view people's houses. So there's a lot of 360 tours being done of houses. So I don't think it's going to be huge, but I don't think it's going to be as much of a no thing as, you remember VR? You remember how everything was going to be, everyone got their goggles with their TVs. So I don't think it's going to be ubiquitous, but I think there definitely is a place for it. Like education is getting a lot bigger, and real estate is getting quite big as well.
Which makes Chris's point that it's not good for narrative.
But I mean, 360.
It's a challenge for narrative.
For 360 to be effective, it is tied to goggles. I mean,
yeah.
And because the idea is, right, that you can look up and around and see around you. So the challenge, again, is directing the viewer's attention. And that's where some of these things, you know, let's say I'm a travel agent and I want to show you what London is going to look like, or Paris, or whatever. Put on these goggles. I've got a host. You follow them around, and that's where the challenge comes in from a production. I don't see it from an entertainment standpoint as much as an informational standpoint. Entertainment seems to be probably still video games.
Well, there is one thing, just going a little bit away from the 360, but it's on the XML part, and the improvement on editorial is for those that work on a workflow on a project that spans across multiple libraries. One of the things that kind of sucks is that you don't know what media has been used from one library and the other. Now the XML has the tag for used media. So potentially we're going to get to a point that, for example, you can use merge X, for example, to merge the used media information and synchronize the libraries. And well, in the future, this can be even more automated than dragging XMLs here and there.
So I just got word from Peter, who had to step out for a press phone call thing. And he said that there is a new app from, I think he means to say Keyflow Pro, that supports Final Cut 10 proxies. I don't know exactly what that means, but it's probably really cool.
I was checking when was the last time that Keyflow Pro had been updated, and it was like a year ago. Yeah, 1 year ago, version 2.3.2. So do you think they are having an update of Keyflow Pro? Is that it?
I don't know. I think so. Also,
I see it on their website.
When you download the new Motion, you get 60 3D objects that you can play with and experiment with. So expect to see those in every bad TV commercial for the next 6 months. You know, along with a bunch of 3D text.
So I'm not familiar with Keyflow Pro. Is that a competitor to Kino?
Kind of, yeah.
Media management.
Not so much, because Keyflow Pro really is a man and Kino is not. So Keyflow Pro needs a database and needs a
really
computer
is a what,
running
sorry?
Keyflow Pro.
You said Keyflow Pro really is a...
Is a MAM, is a media asset management manager. And you need a computer, a server, like a computer that will act as a server with a database open, and you need to create user accounts to access that database and so on and so forth. Kino, it's headless, right? So they only use with sidecar files. So it's a lot easier, and you don't have to have a server. I find the Kino model a lot better than the Keyflow Pro model.
Keyflow sounds a little bit like Final Cut Server. Remember that back in the day?
Mm-hmm.
Good old
days.
Whatever happened to Final Cut Server?
It's
Did
still
it
in
manage?
a rack somewhere. Hey, Felipe, I have a question for you. Just out of curiosity, do you have the new version open?
Yes.
Is there, by chance, this to me would be my _1 feature request if I could get Apple to listen to me. By chance, can I select a default fade, crossfade? Can I change it to an S curve instead of whatever the default is? Apple, if you're listening.
For the audio crossfade?
Yes. I want it. I want
it does
an
do an
S
S
curve
curve by default.
I know it does it.
It does. The,
but I want
the
to
new
be able
audio
to choose.
crossfade.
I don't see anything that would indicate that
you always end up having to modify the fade handles. That's what you're.
Yeah, I know, but I just want to be able to.
You want to make that
by default. When I fade stuff out, by default, I want it to be an S curve.
Yeah. And
I guess I'm going to be disappointed again. I don't know. Maybe I should rethink this whole Premiere thing.
No. Now you got to move to Resolve now.
I know.
Premiere's the old hat now. Now it's Resolve.
It's all about Son Vegas, people.
Okay, so 3D objects. We're gonna see a whole bunch of butterflies. We're gonna hear. Let me go to my screen here. Boop, bop, boop. We're gonna see butterflies, a bicycle. We're gonna see bowling pins in every video we see for the next 6 months, and coffee cups, and basketballs, and a bed, and a bowling ball. So you let your imagination run wild. Figure out what you want to do with that. Okay, prices are the same. There's an education bundle for all 3 apps for $200. No new words from Peter. Lee, have you and I don't know if I can ask you this question. Well, I can ask it. You don't have to answer it. Have you been using 1049?
Oh, sorry. Sorry, you broke up. I can't. What? Sorry, what?
Oh, okay. So, is there any other? Is there?
Oh, the internet in Australia.
Boy, it's so hard to communicate with the future. Felipe, are we missing anything? What are some other things that we need to mention? Okay,
I need to open my notes. We mentioned XML. Compatibility. You don't need to be on Catalina. You can. This update is available on Mojave.
Huh.
Okay. So
that's an interesting change from what might have been seen in the past.
Right. But it is a new XML version, correct, Philip?
Correct. Yes.
What is it? 1.9 now?
I think so. Yeah.
I can show something that you guys are gonna love.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go for a demo time, and let's close these notes here. Now you have this drop-down menu on the timeline, and now you can duplicate your project, you can close your timeline, and you can close all other timelines in case they're open in the history. So if I would open this one,
how does that
and
benefit?
this one,
Does that benefit me by releasing some RAM or something?
It looks like it does, because to be able to switch between these timelines this fast, I think they have to be cached on the RAM or something like that. So if you just close all other timelines, then you probably get rid of some cache there. You can get to the project properties a little bit quicker from here.
You mentioned they renamed duplicate as Snapshot.
Yeah, now it's just Snapshot project.
Okay.
So, okay, so what's the difference between duplicate and duplicate as?
So duplicate as, it gives you the opportunity of changing the settings of the timeline for the new project that you're going to duplicate, which is great for creating a vertical or a square version. There are a couple of other things also that's very interesting. So for example, I'm going to close this timeline here. Oh, this timeline, no, this library real quick. And we're going to run into a bug because, look, live, I was able to break Final Cut. By having the dialogue to create a new project and trying to close the library at the same time. Let's get rid of that.
Felipe, while you're recovering from that, can you, for those of us who never really quite wrapped our heads around this, explain the difference between Snapshot and simply duplicating a project?
Yeah, if you just duplicate your project, let's say that you have compound clips and timeline and multicams. If you duplicate a project and you change something in one of those clips that would ripple through, like a compound, it's going to affect every duplicate of that. A snapshot will freeze in time the changes that you have at that point in time to those compound clips and multicams. So for example, if you have a compound with a color grading inside the compound, and then you create a snapshot, you can change that color grade and it's not going to affect your snapshot. So it's more like a backup, but it definitely weighs on the library.
Yeah, your library will start getting really big. Joseph.
Except that the thing is that compound in the snapshot is now hidden from you. So
it doesn't until you try to match frame into it, and then it'll redraw itself in your browser.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
And Oliver, you can actually watch it happen. So for example, I always have a smart keyword collection that is all my compound clips.
Okay.
So let's say I have project 1 and I've made a compound clip inside it so that I can do the audio processing tricks, whatever. Mm-hmm. And then I want to duplicate project 1. But I want to make substantive changes inside that compound clip. So if I just duplicate, and by the way, if you don't speak Portuguese like Felipe, when he says duplicate, he means duplicate. I'm sorry, you know I love you. When you duplicate the project, that compound clip will be the same in project 1 and project 2. So if I go into project 2, rearrange the clips, what was going on in project 1 will also be changed. But if I duplicate as a snapshot, or now it's called snapshot project. Whatever, it actually makes a whole new compound clip. It's called the same thing until you select that compound clip in your project and match frame into it. And when I open up my keyword, my smart keyword collection of compound clips, as I match frame into it, boop, boop, I'll see another one pop in.
And it becomes labeled compound.
It's called like _1 or compound clip 1 space 1 or what. It's a bad name.
So it's duplicating the compound.
Yeah.
You're not duplicating the compound. When you snapshot the project, it is making a duplicate of the compound. That is a new instance of it that can be edited separately than the compound clip that was in the first project.
Okay. And so the client says, let's go back to that version from a week ago, but make this change. You can do that. You can just like rewind for a week, pick up where you were then and move forward from there.
Just don't edit a snapshot, copy stuff from the snapshot and put it on a new project. That's important.
Yeah.
Do you do that or don't do that?
Don't edit the snapshot.
Don't edit the snapshot.
Yeah. It's not a normal project. It's not a normal project. You can see some funky stuff happening, maybe.
Well,
you might expect a behavior to happen, like for example, oh, I changed the compound and it's not changing on my project, my snapshot, because you're editing from the snapshot. So it's better to put that whole thing from the snapshot into a project and then start working there.
Yeah, it's
so can you right click on a snapshot and say duplicate as project?
No. Well, now that you have that, let me see if you can do that. I'm gonna check if you can do that. But my first idea is like just Command A, Command C, and then Command V into a new project. But I think with the duplicate project as, you probably can do that. Lee is doing a lot of faces there, and he is a master trainer, Final Cut. So I guess he probably can add some stuff there.
No, I got nothing to add.
Oh, okay. But there is something that is brand new, because we have the proxy workflow, and related to proxy workflow is media management inside Final Cut. And there is one thing that is very common that we do, either because we have template libraries or because we are in a project that span across multiple libraries, is to copy stuff from one to another. And depending on the workflow that you are on, you want different behaviors from Final Cut. And those different behaviors are kind of available now. And I have here an example that I have a library A inside folder A that has a certain type of media, in this case ProRes, and folder B, library B, with red RAW inside. And they are open here. So the first behavior is, if I wanted to drag, for example, the event assets A to library B, normally what would happen is that Final Cut would ask, okay, should I send also optimized and proxy? And you check the box on one or another and then click OK. And if that media would have been external to both libraries, you would only create this duplicate of assets A on library B just within the library. The media itself outside the library on Finder on your hard drive would remain where it is. But now when I do drag, I have a lot of extra options. So first of all, we have, do you want me to include media or not? So not including media will be very useful for those who are passing projects from one library to another, because then the second library already has the media that you used on your project. So you're just passing on the reference, the project with all the references. So nothing's going to get duplicated. If you choose media, then there is a behavior to be expected there, and is more about, okay, library B does not have these assets that I'm copying. So, okay, what do you want to copy? Do you want to copy the reference of everything, original, optimized, and proxy, or just one of them? So you can choose. So for example, I could just send original and proxy to folder B. But then we have this other option here in the bottom, copy media stored in external locations. So my media is all referenced outside. If I don't check that and hit OK, I'm going to have that new event in library B. But you see that nothing really happened on my hard drive because the reference is there. So if you are in a project that spans across different libraries, but they are all part of the same thing, they're going to be archived together. That's the type of behavior that you want. Now, if this is just Command Z that I did here on Finder. I wanted to do Command Z on Final Cut. Now, if I drag again that event here and check the option to copy the media, then we're going to see that media coming in here to folder B. So that's basically this ProRes folder that was here is now here. So that's a new behavior that we have there. And there are a few variations within this dialog here that you can see, but those are the main things.
Any changes in consolidation and trimming files?
Yes, there is. So let me do Command Z here again, and Command Z on this one again. And oh no, let me just delete this. So we went back to the way we were before. So if I drag assets A to library B and do not copy the media, so on the Finder there it stays the way it is. And at some point I want to consolidate that. Now I also have an option. First of all, I can choose where to consolidate to, independent of the location that is set on my library. So my library is set to folder B being the media location, but I can say, well, consolidate to the library or to another folder. So for example, I have PostLab here and I have PostLab drive. So I can basically open PostLab drive, and my PostLab died here on me. No, it's just the interface. So I could just choose here to consolidate, for example, to my downloads folder and say, okay, this is the consolidate folder. And then I can say, okay, I'm gonna consolidate only proxy, for example. So it's only gonna transfer the proxies. And then we have an extra check. Okay, you have media that does not have proxies. So do you wanna transcode that media that's missing to proxies? And then you say, okay, transcode. The only problem with this is if you're using H.264 proxies already with a specific frame size, this dialog doesn't give you an option to transcode to H.264. It just does ProRes Proxy. But at least it does. And then when you go to that new folder there that I created, the consolidate, where are you? Here. It's now creating proxies for the media that doesn't have, which is the red media. I don't have any proxies created for those. But yeah, that's generally what changed in Consolidate.
Felipe, while you're in there, do you mind just jumping into File and just showing people how they can relink either to the optimized or to the proxies?
Yeah, so right now, my Final Cut, first of all, is creating some proxies. So it already created one proxy that I'm aware of. I'm going to cancel all of this. I'm going to change this to just proxy. So we can see what has proxy here, and it's just this one, okay? And one thing that you could do in the past was to delete proxies, right? So you could delete generated files, proxy. If I do this, I'm going to get rid of that proxy. But let's say that I had already created, I'm going to do on this one. I think I have proxies for this one. And I already have proxies that were created elsewhere. I can just come to relink files, proxy media, gives me a list of missing, or I can just select all and point to where I could find that, that proxy. And I think I have here kind of proxy. And I relinked all my proxies now. So now I have my proxies there that were created outside Final Cut.
So speaking of the proxies, Compressor can now make proxies for Final Cut without even having to go into Final Cut.
Yes, you could. You could create. You can create proxies basically anywhere, right? I think right now, because the only thing that you would really need is to get a profile, let's say 720p. That 720p, by the way, is actually missing from transcoding. So if I come here and transcode media proxy and choose, let's see, H.264, I can choose scales, right? Same as source, same resolution, 50%, 25, 12.5, or up to these resolutions. It's missing 720 here in the list. And I find that kind of a pity because 540 is too small for me, but 1080 is not necessarily too big, but 720 would be okay. Yeah, so on Compressor, I can just duplicate that as 720p here and call it, let's say, 720p proxy. And on the properties of that, I need to do very few changes. On audio, I just need to enable pass-through. On video, I can...
Now that's important so that it has the exact same number of audio channels, right?
Correct. There are three
That's
things
not
that
to be
you
overlooked.
want.
That's super important.
Yeah, there are three things that you want. Same audio, same length, and same frame rate. So the audio, we check. Audio pass-through, it's going to copy the same audio that's coming in. It's going to come out. The frame size, I'm going to choose up to 720p. And then the next thing here that I want to do is I don't want multi-pass because that's going to take longer to transcode. And it's just proxy, so we can do a single pass on that. And we can choose here as well what type of transcode that I want. And I can choose now proxies, actually. And proxies I'm not 100% sure what are the changes, but I imagine that is the same settings for video that you have on Final Cut itself. So audio pass through, video, change the data rate to proxies, and 720p. And now I can use this.
And can you still type in a data rate next to where it's proxy, or is that grayed out?
No, it's grayed out. You could do it if you would go into custom. I could just say, oh, give me 2 megabit files here. And and I would have that.
Again, if you just really want to smash this down for a web delivery, you can, it doesn't have to say proxy to be used as a proxy, correct?
Correct. It doesn't. It doesn't.
So
you
could make a little tiny, 640 by 360 or whatever.
Yeah, you could. You literally could.
Felipe, is there anything keeping you from using proxies in a multicam?
Keeping me from using proxies on a multicam right now? No, not anymore.
Oh, that's good to know. I'm going to use the hell out of this.
Because the problem with before, if you wanted to create your own proxies, is that you
just so I can get data down to Lee.
Yeah, now we can all hire Lee, right? Because now his internet can handle these proxies.
So that one cable into your little island down there doesn't get saturated with data.
And we all know what data it's saturated with at the moment.
Okay, I'm expecting Peter to hop back in pretty soon here. He's been gone quite a while. I would feel bad if we wrapped this up and he came back. It's like, hey, guy. Oh, nobody's here.
Let me see if I have some other notes here that would be interesting to talk about.
I thought we were going to be talking about my new headphones the whole time. This is so exciting.
Them, don't you? I have actually to find my notes because I was doing the notes on the computer, but now I'm looking for them on the phone, and the phone is not synced yet. And it was actually interesting to hear from Philip saying that Notes is actually not using CloudKit; it's more like a database, and that was really surprising to me. Very interesting.
It's the first. It's the first example I've seen where CloudKit is working with a non-document based app, and so that's Notes is built on a database like Final Cut Pro 10. You don't have separate documents for each note, whereas in Pages, Numbers, etc., you have a separate document for each shared each project. And that's, the Notes is much more akin to Final Cut. So if we'd only seen Notes and, Notes. If we'd only seen Pages and Numbers, then I would be less optimistic about a future for Final Cut Pro collaboration. But having known that the foundation exists within Apple's frameworks, it's like, well, guys, get on it.
So, we were talking about earlier, there's the features that we need or want, and the features that we didn't know we need. And then there's the features that we didn't care about. What would you, let's go around the table. Lee, what do you think? What are these features to you?
Well, the proxy one is genuinely exciting because it does mean that I'm actually going to get work that I wouldn't have been able to get in the past.
At least
seriously, like all jokes aside, it's I joke I do have a decent internet connection. Like I can upload 100 gigs in a day if I need to, but there's lots of people who aren't as fortunate as me, and I think it's great that the proxies are actually going to make a difference in the way people can work, which is enormous. The one that I wanted and I hope gets more support is the temperature stuff and the ProRes RAW footage, because I think that's I'm a huge fan of ProRes RAW. I'm a huge advocate for it, and I think the more features we can add to it to make it more useful and get more people using it is great. The 360 stuff, it's nice, but
yeah, I would agree with that. Joseph, what do you think?
Basically exactly what Lee said. I'm just going to add, because I don't care about 360. The proxy workflow is absolutely huge. One thing I'll add is the audio crossfades. That feature, I've been needing that, and that is just perfection. It's so easy. It just works. It's brilliant. Love it.
In your experience, has working with proxies been lacking, or were the proxy features such that you just didn't deal with it?
The proxy features before were limiting in how I work and working with a remote editor, and it was quite complex to make sure things were relinked, and like you pointed out, if you have graphics on there, they suddenly don't play because they're proxy with the alpha, blah, 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 all that. So all of that goes away now. And I think that I will be able to use proxy workflows a lot more than I could before, which is definitely beneficial, especially in the age of COVID, where I do work with people who are remote, and this now makes it a lot easier to move files around.
Yep.
Maintain that workflow.
If I can add one thing, and
fine.
So I know, sorry, I know. It's and it is going back to the proxy thing, but it's actually the proxy thing, and it's the vertical and the square video. So I am a grumpy old man. So like back in the day when I was allowed to walk in the street, I would go up to people in the street and get them to turn their phones into landscape when they were shooting videos. Like, stop it. I go to them and go, I do this for a living in the nicest possible way. You don't have your TV sideways on the wall. Stop it. But I'm learning that I have to adapt or die. So I do appreciate that the vertical thing is happening and the square thing is happening, whether we like it or not, it's happening. And the way that the proxy stuff works and the way that the vertical and the square stuff works, the fact that you can just right click, like you've edited, you've finished the project, you've presented to the client goes, great, fantastic. Oh, by the way, I know that's your favorite word, Chris. Oh, by the way, can we just get a vertical version? And you go, yeah, no problem. Because you can just right click on it, say duplicate as, name it vertical, and then just go in and do a couple of little changes along the way. And
yeah,
as usual with Apple, it's not so much what they do, but it's how they let you do it, and they make it easy.
You know, it's interesting. I've been saying for a couple of years now, I wish I had more control over the proxy stuff, and the way they've actually implemented stuff, it's beyond what I had envisioned. Philip, what's your final thoughts on this?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, proxy, well, particularly having the proxies in the XML, it's a big improvement for us because we can enhance apps and enhance the user experience for our apps because Apple gives us something more in the XML.
Okay.
You know, the limitation has been, you know, if you have red media and you want to get thumbnails in Producer's Best Friend, you can't because Producer's Best Friend doesn't looks at the original media, and AV Foundation, even with the Pro Video Codecs, doesn't support red natively, or Canon or any of the things that have their own plugin. But if you create proxies, then you can then use those in Producer's Best Friend, and it can produce thumbnails where previously we couldn't. So, you know, it seems like a small enhancement in the Apple world, but it makes a big improvement for us third-party developers.
Right. So something you needed or something you didn't know you needed?
Something we needed.
Good. Oliver, what are your final thoughts?
Well, I mean, I use all of them, right? So Final Cut I use when it fills the need for the appropriate project. So I come at it from a standpoint that I like the refinements they've done, but it does feel incremental to me. And that's really because the Pro Apps team is encumbered by having to keep up with what the rest of Apple is doing. So I think that hurts them in the long run. So we'll see. I haven't played with this version. Some of it sounds a little bit like they're catching up, but you know, I'll see.
Yeah, I think it is an incremental update. It is 4.9, whatever, 10.4.9. I mean, it's clearly that. I wonder, you know, is a 10.5 with full Apple Silicon, you know, world. I realize that this is that, as Philip was saying, this is working on Apple Silicon.
No, this is fully native on Apple Silicon. It's not. There is no more work to be done by the Pro Apps team for Apple Silicon. It is all done.
Gotcha.
It's finished.
Okay.
Done. Approved, QA assured, and released.
So then you think about it and you go, well, how much of development over the last 2 years has been focused on that transition? And I would imagine a lot of it. You know, Well, this is the beauty. So, Philip, I appreciate your gesture. This is the beauty of my life, that they tell me nothing, that I can say whatever I want. I'm going to say, I'm guessing a lot of development has been focused on the change to Apple Silicon, and a true 10.5 is going to be interesting. You know, it's going to be super interesting.
So that actually does bring up the point, because ProApps is in a different position than an outside developer. So when Apple Silicon hardware gets released, obviously this version has got to still run on Intel machines as well as Silicon, right? So
Right.
Is this actually forked in the way that it runs native on both, or is it really running through?
It runs native on both.
Okay.
Yeah. If you have Apple Silicon, it runs native on Apple Silicon. If you have Intel, it has, and it's like the old fat binaries. I mean, both support for both are in the app bundle.
So it's not running through Rosetta 2 or whatever.
No. Our apps are running through Rosetta for the moment, but but Apple, no. Apple Final Cut Pro 10, Motion, and Compressor are all native on Apple Silicon right now and native on Intel at the same time.
From the same installer? Or?
From the same installer, because both bundles are installed.
Okay.
Interesting.
The Apple App Store app actually does some finessing during the install, so you don't have excess hard drive space being taken up by something you don't need. Right.
Yeah, I didn't know if it, basically detects the hardware that it's downloading to and says, okay, you get this version or you get that version.
It's not quite that simple, because the thing that's downloaded has both, but only one can, in some circumstances, only one is installed.
Now, now that I'm back, can I say something you probably already talked about? And you can tell me
Absolutely.
that I'm late to the party.
As long as it's not more about proxy, you can talk about whatever you want.
Okay, no, it's not about proxies. I've seen that if you've used the 90-day free trial, if you download the new version, you get another 90-day free trial.
Oh.
All right. Half a year of free Final Cut.
Yeah, I mean, it's good news all around, really, isn't it? So, I mean, I would have thought the next update is going to be a bit longer than 3 months, because the last one was how many? It's like 2 years. So who knows?
Anyway, guys, I've got to jump out.
Yeah.
This is great. Sorry, now Peter, now you're back. I'm got to go. But
yeah, well, the interesting thing is now what I've got to do is I've got to kind of afterwards, I've got to go back and then watch it when I wasn't here to catch up on all the stuff that I didn't hear before or whatever. So yeah, I mean, what a great day. I mean, it was what I would say. And I believe you got an update to a product up your sleeve, Philip.
Yes. Now that the new version of Final Cut is out, we can release our workflow extension for Creator's Best Friend. And so there is actually a fork in the workflow extension API. Support continues for the previous API, but there's a brand new API with 10.4.9 for workflow extensions. And obviously, it's only this one that supports Swift, and Creator's Best Friend is a Swift native application. So the workflow extension is going to be within the next week or so. It's working internally. We just got to get it through the approval process.
Yeah.
And Philip, thank you very much for Creator's Best Friend.
Oh, good.
It has been really useful.
Well, thank Peter for the idea.
Well, this is good. Just sitting there thinking, well, there must be something that does this, and that's how it came about.
That's the story of Lumberjack too.
Yeah.
All right, I got to go. It's been great.
Right,
thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
Hey, Felipe, we were going around the table, sort of final thoughts before Peter came back. So, Peter, I was asking everybody the question. There's the features we needed or thought we needed. There's the features we didn't know we needed, and there's the features we don't care about. What are your thoughts, Felipe?
Oh, the ones that I don't care about really are the 360 ones. Me personally, I don't really touch much of those things. The ones that I really needed and wanted was the proxy stuff, because it enables a whole multitude of workflows. And for all the clients that I deal with, studios and agencies, they were craving this, and it's here now. And the stuff that I didn't know that I wanted or needed was the smart conform. The smart conform is actually really not bad.
Yeah.
And everyone that I work with, they ask for vertical and square later on. So now it's much easier.
Yeah, I would definitely characterize this as like, and I don't think I've ever talked about this before, but there's like consumer upgrades and there's professional upgrades. You know, and yeah, the social media stuff might be considered consumer, but the proxy stuff is definitely the pro upgrades. I mean, most people that are using Final Cut, let's say there's 2 million downloads, whatever it is, most people aren't messing around with proxies that much. But for those of us that are doing this, that are really at, you know, at a high level, you get it. And if you don't get it right away, you scratch at it a little and you go, oh, wow, yeah, I do need that. And I think that that's super important. Again, you know, Apple gets so much beef about, you know, being the whatever, all the iMovie Pro crap. Like, we're past that, you know, and this is super advanced stuff. Super advanced.
But also we are assuming that everyone has super powerful computers that can deal with all of this media that we're doing. Like I'm in contact with a lot of editors in Brazil. They're using computers that are much older than the rest of the world is using. So Proxy, for example, is really good because the computers have H.264 encoders since 2010 or 11 or something like that. So they can take advantage of that.
Are they using computers that are older than 2010?
Some people I know that are, but I know a lot of people that have computers between 2011 and 2013 that they're not even on Mojave.
I can't specifically remember. Were computers prior to 2010, did they actually use electricity like the modern ones?
Steam.
Steampunk Macintosh.
Squirrels. That's why the old Mac Pro was so big. You had to make space for the squirrels and the treadmill.
So, Mr. Wiggins, while you were away, we discussed the motion 3D objects that come bundled in motion. Yeah. We also talked about the how Compressor can make proxies.
Has anybody tried them out? Because I found out a bit more info.
Oh, tell us more
on the models.
The 3D models.
Well, you know, before it was kind of like postcards in space in motion. So
I love that phrase.
Well, it's not my phrase, but
I know, but it's so appropriate.
You fudged it, and any third-party plugin that did any 3D cheated it because it looked at the postcard in space and then moved the camera. If you're with me, and then when you face the object, it would go with it. So in motion, it's a full 3D object. And the textures go with the template as well, so you don't have to load those up. But it's in 3D. So
the basketball will never be mistaken for an orange, is what you're saying?
Correct. So you can light it. You can light a 3D object, but it won't cast a shadow, and it won't reflect. So it's there, but it doesn't do everything a thing that you would expect in motion to do. Although, if you have two 3D objects in the same group, they'll interact between them. So you can do repel and whatever. There you
go. Is that something you can actually rig a plugin to run as a motion template inside Final Cut?
Yep.
Or too early to tell?
Yep. So if you build a motion template and put a 3D object in it and publish it, it will pop up in Final Cut Pro 10 as a plugin, and you can give it to somebody else, and the textures will go with it. So I think it's the first step in 3D objects in motion. I mean, it adds a lot of creative ideas to who's going to be the first person to launch a template that's got a 3D object in it. Not me, because I'm going to go to sleep later on because I've been up for how many hours. I shouldn't say this in front of Lee because obviously he's going to have 2 hours sleep before his kids wake him up. But I think I just think it's one of those things where you look at it and you think it's great, but it's not until a bit further down the line, a few weeks in, a month in, do you realize that actually some of the features are actually really, really good. So for me, the highlight, I think, is possibly going to be the 3D objects in motion because of what it can give you. I think the proxies are good, but I work in broadcast and we don't really use proxies, but I will be using the new audio fades when we upgrade to 10.4.9. Was it 8, 9?
This is 9. This one's
9. There you go. When we upgrade 10.4.9, which won't be the big job I'm starting in a few days, we'll still be on 8.
I gotta say, I was really thrilled today when I got to teach Oliver something.
Yeah, Oliver, you're right. You're absolutely right. And also, you probably gathered that, and I think Felipe said it updates your libraries. So if you've got a lot of archive stuff picking up the libraries to update them. And also, I mean, it's a shame Philip's gone, talking about the new XML. We rely on a few apps that use the XML, and that might break. And I think if this
it still has 1.8 there.
Yeah. I think if this had come out maybe 2-3 weeks ago, then yes, we'd be using it tomorrow. But it's just a bit snug to the.
Are you just starting on the bike race thing now?
Yeah, starts on Saturday, so that's three weeks of that.
And you're in France now?
Well, I could say I'm in France, in a travel lodge in France. Now I'm in Ealing, so a bit less glamorous than
that. Is not France.
Well, we're actually on our show. We have a team of 20 or so that normally go to France, but they're actually not in France, but they're on location. If you're with me, because just the COVID thing, international travel and production is just
Felipe found another feature.
Not feature, but there is a company that already integrated FCPX ML 1.9 to the workflow. Frame.io. Now you can import proxies as proxies to Final Cut.
Yeah, Frame.io have released a new workflow extension. I'm pleased because their old one sucked, to be honest with you. I think I said that more or less
to Emery.
To Emery when he was on. But the old workflow extension was quite clunky, and you couldn't do everything you needed to do, like stacks and everything like that. So you had to kind of like upload it and then open up the web app and do it and rename it. And now I haven't used it. I must admit I haven't used it, but I think the new because obviously Philip told you that the new workflow extensions are written in Swift. So I think that everyone's been waiting for this one to come out. So that's why you've seen the Frame.io one.
Yeah, the other thing I'm hearing about the Frame.io extension is that you can drag clips directly from the extension directly into Final Cut. You used to have to download them.
Yeah, well, it's they're after the market, aren't they? And it's just interesting.
I'm just saying
what they're doing. And look, listen, they're going to be 3 or 4 more workflow extensions that pop up between now and the end of the week or whatever. So it would be my guess, including Creator's Best Friend.
Yeah, Lee forgot to pay his power bill. Are you okay?
The island, it floated a little bit to the east, and the plug got pulled.
No, it's because see we're across the date line, so they just reset it, and when that happens, everything just goes a bit,
All right. Anything else? We've been at this for an hour and 45.
I think that's it.
And I'm going to make a live stream now in Portuguese.
Oh, okay. Well, you can't have us on.
You're an animal.
Unfortunately, I cannot have you guys. If I could, I totally would.
Why? I know a little Portuguese.
It would be really nice. People would really enjoy seeing you guys there on my live stream. I'm pretty sure.
I'll come on. You can translate.
I'll sit in.
Do you want to sit in for the first 5 minutes?
Give me 3 things that I could say that sound that sound really smart in Portuguese, and I'll just pipe in.
Bom dia, eu amo Final Cut.
Bom dia. Blah blah blah. Final Cut.
Eu amo.
Eu amo.
Eu amo.
Eu amo.
Yeah.
I love Final Cut.
Yeah.
Il amo Final Cut.
Yeah.
I'm down. And then how do I say I need to go do work in America?
Preciso trabalhar.
Anyway, thanks everybody for being here. I appreciate it. Lee, thanks for staying up late. Joseph, thanks for taking a slice out of your very busy day, I'm sure. Peter, have fun with the bikes. And Oliver, thanks for sharing.
You probably need to make me the host before you go, though.
The host? Yeah. Let's do that so we don't do a 12-hour
recording.
Whatever. I think Peter Wiggins.
It's happened before.
I know. And now I am just a nobody. This is always fun. It's always fun to talk to smart people all over the world. It's a real honor.
Love you guys. Thank you for having me here.
Hey, let me do something. Let me do something because I haven't done it yet. I want to thank our friends at iDustrial Revolution for making the greatest plugins on the planet. And I also want to thank our dear friends at Otherworld Computing for making all this happen. And we're looking forward to seeing that Flex 8, whatever that cool new box traveling around the world. Do you have it yet?
I do.
Is it amazing?
It is, yes.
Or do you have it with you in your hotel room there?
Funny you should say that. No. I could show you a waste bin.
You've got an old Mac Pro.
Yeah.
Do you know the product we're talking about, Lee?
Yes, I do.
Thunderbait Flex.
What's it called again?
Thunderbait Flex 8. In fact, actually, I think, Lee, it might be coming your way at some point.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Hold on. I'm pulling up a picture. Boom.
Shipping is crazy down here at the moment. Like I got sent something from Chicago and it took 2 days to arrive. And I got sent something from the other side of town and it took 2 weeks to arrive.
Wow.
But the Thunderbait Flex 8 is kind of just a big expansion box with disks in it that you can do whatever you want. You can put SSDs in.
I'm going to say you can't really use the word just when you're talking about this thing because it's so much.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
And then it's got a PCIe slot. So I think it takes one long one and a short one or something like that. I mean, I'm yet to get into all of that. And up it popped on my desktop, straight off. You didn't need to configure it, but you've got soft RAID that comes with it that you can.
Don't forget, it's got a card reader. Hello.
Yeah, and it's got
the most expensive, largest card reader you're ever going to put on your desktop.
Well, it's the most expensive MacBook Pro charger, isn't it? Because the one on the back charges your MacBook Pro as well. So should you want to, but
look how pretty that's going to look on your desk, Lee.
Well, actually, it will. I'll have to find some space because let me just pick this up quickly and show you my desk. I've already got a few black boxes
and a few displays, Lee. Show them in displays.
Well, that's nothing.
Just the 2 XDRs.
Yeah, I'll
Do you really want your hard drives that close? Aren't they loud?
I'm deaf. It's fine.
Do you realize your displays are worth more than my car?
You need a nicer car.
Are those the Apple displays? I didn't notice.
Yeah.
And you have 2 of them?
Yeah.
Wow.
A little bit. Well, yeah.
I'm just playing.
But it doesn't have the stands, Chris. It's okay.
So yeah, I gotta say,
I have a very understanding wife.
Off the record, kind of. No, it's not. I was talking with somebody about a whole HDR project for next month, and I don't know if it's going to happen because apparently we're too busy. Which you feel like a douche saying that during a.
I'll do it. I'll do it. You can send it to me now. Proxies.
What?
Gents, I have to go.
Yeah.
Lovely seeing you all.
Joseph, thank you very much. As always.
Joseph.
Bye, everybody.
See you guys. I'm actually already live on my channel. It has a countdown going on already.
Oh. So do you need to give me a different link? Is it a Zoom thing?
No, it's gonna be a Mimo thing for you.
Do you want to send me a Mimo live link?
Yes, it should
a
be
Mimo call
coming to you.
Oh, can I come too? I miss people.
You wanna talk to my guys in Brazil? Yeah, come on over.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotta go too.
Yeah. All right, Oliver. Thank you very much.
See you, Oliver.
See you guys. Okay. Bye bye.